Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. So inshallah, I'm Sister Aisha, and today we are going to be talking about promoting positive self-esteem in children. So lots of you may already know me. For those who don't, I'll do a quick introduction. So my name is Sister Aisha, and I'm a speech and language therapist in the UK, and I'm also a parenting coach, and I currently help Muslim mums making a strong connection with their children and helping Muslim moms with their relationship with their children through my parenting workshops, which I do on Saturdays. So what I do is I try and give a variety of different talks, lectures, workshops. We do also do workshop for children as well, for children rather, in trying to help them understand Islam. And the whole reason why I do it is because I strongly feel like the more connected you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and with the Islamic way of doing things, the more successful you'll be with your children and in turn with your families at large. And this will be really sort of beneficial for the Muslim Ummah as well. So what I'm going to do today is spend this hour talking about this particular topic. I'll answer any questions you've got at the end, so do drop them in the chat if you've got them. Then right at the end, I'll tell you a little bit about the positive parenting classes that I'll be starting on Saturday, inshallah. So if you stay right to the end, inshallah, you'll benefit because you'll hear about that. And also for the people who registered through email, I will send you the handouts as well. So if you did register through email, just drop your email in the chat box and the admins will make a note of it and we will send you the handouts that go with this workshop, because if you don't attend the workshop, they won't make sense on their own. So they're just to complement it, inshallah. Okay, let's get started. So I'll tell you the objectives that we will be discussing first. So we're going to cover how you can foster self-esteem in children, okay? And we are going to help you understand your role in the development of their self-esteem. And sisters, this isn't just relevant for children. A lot of this workshop is also relevant for adults as well. So as I'm going along, you might find things that are useful for yourself, inshallah, or even for other family members, including other adults. So it's not just exclusively relevant to children. We're going to get into some self-discovery into your current skills and abilities and how your wisdom can help shape a child. Next, we are going to cover several different ways that low self-esteem presents itself in children. Then we will identify the steps to developing positive self-esteem. Okay, we'll talk about how you can develop positive self-esteem for your children. And finally, we'll create a plan to strengthen your skills so you can foster confidence in your children. So let's start off by asking the question, sisters, what exactly is self-esteem? If you know, or if you think you know what self-esteem is, can you write it in the chat, please, sister? So we are going to interact with you throughout. Let me know what you think self-esteem is. And don't be afraid and worried about, writing in the wrong answer. You've obviously attended today because you are, you have some interest in it. So just drop in the chat what you think it is. Yep, so Sister Ayan's written thinking in a positive way. Sister Tamim said having confidence. Sister Madia said a personal level of confidence which might not be based on ability. Good. Everything is achievable. Good. So let's have a look. How you feel about yourself, Sister Sabine? Yeah, through hard work. So let's give you the official definition of what it is. Respecting yourself. Yeah. So self-esteem, right, is a subjective assessment of ourselves that changes over time. And this can even change day to day for some people, okay? And it's often used interchangeably with self-worth, self-confidence, and self-regard. People who have good self-esteem are usually more self-assured and therefore often willing to take more chances. They're less concerned about making mistakes and looking foolish to others. Those with low self-esteem may second-guess themselves. They may somehow feel like they're less than others, and they may be overly concerned about what other people think about them. And they may take risks without fully considering the consequences, or they might be too afraid to take risks at all. So that's like a detailed description of self-esteem. Now, don't forget that if we understand that within the Islamic parameters, then that exists in Islam as well, because it's about having the confidence, sisters, but balancing it so that you're not on the one extreme where you don't have any at all and you're constantly thinking about negative self-thoughts, or the child's thinking I'm not worth anything. That's one extreme. The other extreme Islamically will be going into the category of showing off. So obviously we're prohibited and it's not desirable to be in either of those categories, but the middle ground is having this sort of confidence in a good moderate amount, which you do need to have, not even just as children, as adults as well. So there was a really famous experiment that took place in the 70s, okay? And in this experiment, what they did was they changed the grading in schools so that instead of passing or failing, kids either needed improvement, they were satisfied, or they exceeded expectations. So those of you who've got parents of children, wherever you are, especially in the UK, on the reports, you will often see these words popping up. So does the child need improvement? Have they made satisfactory progress or exceeded expectations? So do you remember when it used to be A, B, C, or 1, 2, 3 gradings, but then they sort of changed it into these words? And what happened when they did this experiment is sports became cooperative instead of collaborative. And instead of competition, everyone became really focused on cooperation, okay? Now, on the face of it, these are not bad things. In fact, they're good things, but without the balance of learning responsibility and gaining confidence, the false sense of self-worth, it doesn't have any foundation. So actually what happened was the outcome was a huge failure. This experiment was hugely, hugely unsuccessful because whilst they focused on praise, and that's a good thing, fostering cooperation and collaboration is critical, okay? And these are all good things. However, what did they do in the experiment? They removed expectations and accountability from the child. The child didn't have any expectation or accountability. And if you put that into the equation, it makes a mess of things. So rewarding adults or kids for showing up but putting in no effort to achieve results can lead to an exaggerated sense of accomplishment for basically nothing, okay? So showing up is mandatory not to be rewarded. Now, let me give you an example of this, sisters, what it actually looks like. Imagine your child brings their book bag home, okay? So if you're a mom and you've got a child in school, it's likely they'll be given a reading book to read. And if they bring the book bag home, this might be accomplishment for some of them, but this is a given. Of course, they have to bring their book bag home, because how can they do their reading if they don't bring it home? They actually have the book in the bag and their homework assignment. But now imagine, this is what went wrong with the experiment. Imagine they sit at the table for an hour doing nothing, or worse, playing on their mobile phone. Think about it. So what does a kid learn when we lie on their behalf to protect them from reality? What message does it send to the child when we run interference between our kids and their consequences? Is that the behavior that you want more of? What happens when we don't allow people to deal with their failures? How do kids learn coping skills if they never experience failure or negative consequences? And how do people learn responsibility without expectation? If the child's sitting there feeling quite proud of themselves that they brought their book bag home, but nothing else is expected of them, then actually you're encouraging all these wrong, negative things, which you don't want, and they're not going to ever learn, okay? Now, this outcome differs from what we think as low self-esteem, as the exaggerated sense of importance and inability to accept feedback, okay? Much less criticism and frequently results in an extreme response. What happens to these children when they grow up, sisters? And what happened to these children who the experiment was done on? These kids are more likely to talk back, become defensive, and sometimes explosive. The reaction is congruent with the event. Instead of feeling bad about their performance or letting people down, they blame everyone else and accept no responsibility. This is called having an external locus of control. Okay, so this is what they grow into when when they did this experiment, this is what happened. So in other words, you can say that these children grew up with a sense of entitlement. So chances are, if you are under the age of 70, or you were or are directly affected by this experiment, you may have been raised by parents who were influenced by the collective wisdom at the time, or perhaps raised your children using this approach. If not, you likely interact with people who are raised with this type of parenting. Maybe you know a spouse or an employee, somebody at work, somebody at the member of the board where you work, somebody in management, a teacher, or just somebody in your circle. You might recognize that they're this type of person. And you or they may be very lenient with loose boundaries. Okay, so this is the person, they have no boundaries, they're very, very dominating, and they're very controlling or manipulative and calculating. And that's not just by accident that they became like that. This is one of the reasons, because when they were little, they didn't have any expectations or anything, like all those things that I've just said. So this is what they turned into. So like many things, self-esteem can result in seemingly oppressive extremes. These behaviors are what we generally think of when we hear the term low self-esteem. So sometimes when children or adults have low self-esteem, it's apparent because they have little faith in themselves and they allow people to take advantage of them or settle for less. Okay, and this is what, as a society, normally we expect low self-esteem. So if I said to you, our sisters, do you know a child with low self-esteem? You might say, oh yeah, I know this child because they've got no confidence and they've got really low self-esteem. They don't really, partake in anything. They don't believe they can do it. But actually, the opposite presentation is also equally true. Okay, some people disguised as confident and secure, when beneath the surface, they're fragile and uncertain of themselves. So maybe, this type of person that they're overly exaggeratedly confident and they're really loud and they come across as bubbly all the time. But actually, from inside, they haven't got self-esteem. So they put that on as a mask to try and look like they're doing really well. And this might only seem obvious when they crack under pressure or when, they experience rejection. Why? Because they become extreme in these behavior patterns, or they show their vulnerability. They become difficult to deal with when the crisis is over. They usually feel the need to hide or downplay their shame or vulnerability, right? They'll say, oh no, I'm okay. And you think, subhanAllah, what happened to that person? They're really confident usually. How come under the pressure they just suddenly cracked? It's because they don't have the self-esteem, but they're putting on an act as if they have. Now, how can you recognize these people when they grow up into adults? Often they are involved in codependent or addictive type of relationships. And you learn this in psychology when you're looking at different types of relationships. And this is like one of the sort of things that they teach you. Or this person may gravitate to those on the fringes, the less popular people, people of lower status or lower socioeconomic status, right? These people choose friends and spouses who need to be rescued or they need to be fixed. These people could be doing underachieving, underemployed or unpaid jobs. These people may fight for others or other causes, but they won't fight for themselves because they've got really low or no self-esteem. They have a problem speaking up for themselves. Okay, assertiveness is foreign to them, passive or aggressive. They sometimes accept unfair or often abusive treatment. Now, sisters, you might know people like this or children like this, and they just sit there and they take it. If someone's being horrible to them or nasty to them, or attacking them. So there are some people out there and they won't do anything. And other people like you and I might say, subhanAllah, why are they just sitting there doing nothing? Okay, why are they accepting it? It's because of this. They are often taken advantage of because they put others first and often ignore their own needs. Okay. But paradoxically, the flip side of low self-esteem or the other end of the continuum looks very different, okay? So instead of being passive-aggressive or unable to take responsibility for one's well-being, the aggressive persona is developed. So you might see people who are often aggressive, entitled, and opportunistic bullies. When their power and control is threatened, they become violent or they crumble and they become the victim. Everything is somebody else's fault. There's no accountability for them, because they never had any expectations or responsibility. There are some people who are very manipulative and pull the strings behind the curtain, so to speak, skillfully avoiding blame and subtly calling the shots. They are often found in politics. You'll see this type of person, or in the head of a certain company. There might be leaders who you can say, oh, that's that type of person. And many of these people, unfortunately, have the characteristics of being narcissists or sociopaths, right? So everything is about them. So they could be aggressive, risk-taking without thinking of the consequences. They could be overtly or covertly dominant, often under the guise of helping. So you might think that they're trying to help, but actually they're trying to be quite dominant. They are unable to let things go. So this is the type of person who must have the last word. They need to be right. They need to be the best, or they need to have the most. They either overtly dismiss others' views or blindly accept it without regarding it. Or they're sneaky because they pull strings in the background, right? They do what you call greasing the wheels. Or they're too much. They're over the top in their speech and over the top in their actions. And they don't stop until they get what they want. They could be ice cold or very hot responses to being corrected or being challenged. So if you said to this type of person, oh, I think you're wrong, or I think it should be this way, they'll get really upset about it. They might stay late, take on extra work, offer to help without any extra cost. And they'll seek approval from others to bolster their self-esteem. So because these people won't have self-esteem themselves, they'll need you to give them that self-esteem. They'll need you to tell them that they're great or amazing, or what they've done is great and amazing. They'll either react with rage and indignation or fall apart emotionally and become quite depressed. Okay. So now you come to the self-esteem ladder, right? The self-esteem ladder is the process of developing self-esteem. And self-esteem is a complex process with many moving parts. Okay, each step is in the progression leads to accepting responsibility for our choices. It's learning from our mistakes. It's developing decision-making skills, and it's building confidence. All these things, sisters, are what you would find in the self-esteem ladder. So you can all agree that, oh my God, subhanAllah, it's important to have self-esteem, and nobody wants a child to grow up into that kind of adult that I've just described, which is what happens when they don't have it at all. So in order to develop self-esteem, there are things you can do, but these are the different parts that you need. I'll say them again. You need to allow the child to accept responsibility for the choices. You need to allow them to learn from their mistakes. You need to allow them to develop decision-making skills, and you need to allow them to build confidence. So number one, expectations lead to accountability. Okay, responsibility requires accountability. This is why, sisters, your children in school have expectations, right? The teacher will write on the report, end of year expectations. It's when you join any sort of class, you have expectation, or in your life, when you join anything, you do it with a sense of expectation as to why you're doing what it is that you're doing. If you don't have accountability, you must be internally motivated, which usually only happens with experience and maturity. So to give you examples, sisters, lots of you will have Quran teachers for your children, right? Not just Quran teachers, well, for any subject. And the reason you have it is because it gives that child accountability, doesn't it? Otherwise, I would say to you, well, imagine you didn't have that teacher. What's the expectation? The expectation is the child's going to want to do it from themselves. And we're all human beings. And more often than not, if you just left a young child alone with a Quran or a Qaida and said, just teach yourself or learn yourself, it would be very rarely that a child would do that continuously. This only comes with experience and maturity. Maybe as ladies, it's different because you're an adult, you've gone through life experiences, and you'll probably approach it differently. But we all need accountability, because that's what develops that sense of responsibility. When given responsibility, we ultimately have a choice about stepping up to accept it or avoiding it. Okay, so when you give the child a responsibility, it automatically leads to choices. Either they're going to do it, or they're not going to do it and deal with the consequences. And we talk a lot about this in the positive parenting that I teach, because we teach how they then learn from those consequences, because there's different types of consequences. There's natural consequences, there's logical consequences, and the child has to learn to make those choices. But imagine you gave them no responsibility at all for anything, sisters. They're not learning that at all. Either choice has consequences, okay? Learning to choose correctly is a valuable lesson for future responsibilities. Now, considering the effects of each choice and our desired outcome teaches us critical thinking and results in better decision making. Maybe the first 3 or 4 times your child will make a mistake, sisters. After that, they will learn, because they want a certain outcome. They have to learn critical thinking. That leads to better decision making. So maybe the 4th time or the 5th time or the 6th time or even the 10th time, they'll be different in the actions that they take, because they've learned to critically think. And these are such valuable life skills. If I said, to my child, go and I've actually done this, to be honest with you. I've said to them, go to Asda and buy X, Y, and Z. Well, the first time they had to figure out how to get there. It's not far, it's only a couple of minutes away, but it was their first trip. And then they got more confident doing it until they go themselves to get, the weekly shopping. But then there's things the child then has to learn and navigate, like what happens if they don't find something in one of the aisles, or what happens when this happened with my daughter, when the card doesn't work on the machine. What do you do then? You have to learn to think how to react to these real life situations. And the only way you can teach your child to critically think what to do is to, in a safe way, expose them to these sensible sort of situations where they have to deal with the consequences. And it happens in lots of things, for their homework, for their PE kit. How does a child approach that? Is it you doing it for them, constantly nagging and reminding them, or have they got the critical thinking skills to be able to deal with their choices when they do or don't do it? They learn to take calculated risks by weighing up the options, and making decisions leads to improved results, which I've just said. That this is something that they start learning to do. Like, if I do this, this is going to happen. Is it worth it for me, etc. Inevitably, some of our choices will result in mistakes, in miscalculations, and in failure, but also in success. So like I said, not all the time will you or will your children have the correct desired outcome. We're human beings. We're prone to making mistakes, okay? And sometimes you are going to make mistakes. Sometimes you are going to make miscalculations, and sometimes you'll just completely fail. But then sometimes you'll also succeed as well. And this is why it's important to allow your child to do this. So teaching children that failure is part of the process of learning and growth allows them to accept mistakes and failure as learning experiences, instead of perceiving them as letting you down or that they are personally failures. Okay, so this part is really important. I'll say it again. If you teach your children that failure is part of learning and part of growing up, this means that when they do grow up, they'll accept mistakes and they'll accept failure as learning experiences, and they will not see them as letting you down or that they have failed. So if they didn't achieve what they wanted to in an exam or in whatever, they won't be so upset thinking I've let my mum and dad down, or they won't be so upset thinking I'm a failure. They shouldn't be thinking that, because they should have been taught from childhood that actually sometimes you succeed and sometimes you don't. And this critical step in personal development is missing in many adults, okay? Learning from success and failure is part of our growth and leads to mastery of skills and development of self. And subhanAllah, I've seen this so many times, sisters. I've worked in the mosque for over 10 years now with different sisters from across various backgrounds and professions. And you do see the ones who are willing to learn and adapt and pick up these skills so that they can grow as an individual, and the people who don't, because as adults you can see in them they can't fail in certain things, or if they do, they have an absolute breakdown, or they take it personally and they can't learn from their mistakes because maybe it's something that they've not been it's not been developed in them from a young age. Okay, without this critical piece, which begins with accountability for expectations, responsibility, we lack confidence, which is the foundation of self-esteem. That's why some children won't have self-esteem, sisters, because they won't have confidence. They won't have confidence. If you go back, I'm going to go backwards. So they don't have self-esteem because they don't have confidence. They don't have confidence because they didn't have responsibility. And they didn't have responsibility because they had no expectations, right? They had no accountability. They were never accountable for anything ever. You know, sometimes parents like to rescue their children. Sometimes parents just say, I won't even ask the child to do it. I'll do it for them. That's easier. It's easier than shouting at them. It's easier than wasting my time. And they do this for everything in their whole life. And so that's why you can imagine those children grow up, they don't have that confidence. And then in turn, they don't have that self-esteem. So finally, as children gain confidence, their expectations and beliefs in themselves grow as well. So you might be thinking now, that's all very well, but how can I help my child develop self-esteem? Self-esteem comes from within, sisters. It's not something you can give to your children. I can't give you a book and say, do this and your child will have self-esteem. You can't give them a medicine to feed them self-esteem, but you can foster it by teaching them the skills they need to gain confidence. And part of that process entails allowing them the freedom to make choices and to fail. Obviously, sisters, within your guidance and within, Islamic laws, I'm not saying allow them to go out and do something which is completely extreme and unacceptable, but do allow them to make those choices. Learning from failure is part of the process, okay? For some people, they have illusions of control over their children, and this can be really difficult. And some parents are really controlling, but they pretend that they're protecting their children or they're keeping their children safe, but they're not. They're actually obsessed with being quite controlling, and to the extent that their children aren't allowed to do anything, okay? And, yes, you do control what happens to a certain degree, and this is part of parenting, but also within limits, within sensible limits. So what can you do? Expectations lead to accountability. So be clear about your expectations with your child. Ensure you both agree on the expectations, and if needed, spell it out step by step. So what does this look like, sisters? So for my parenting students, for example, I'll say to them that if you've got an expectation with your child, does your child know that that's the expectation? Say that they're a little bit younger, you can ask them to repeat it back to you. If they repeat it back to you that, yes, this is what you expect of me, mommy, then you know, obviously, that they've understood it. But don't assume that they've understood that that's an expectation if you've never told them that that's an expectation, right? So I expect you to be home by 4 o'clock or whatever, or I expect you to have done this by this date, or I expect you to have washed the dishes and you've got a couple of hours, whatever. But as long as you're both clear on the expectations. Get all adults on the same page. Clear rules and expectations should be agreed upon by all adults, including grandparents, other family members that look after them, and babysitters. Help others understand that inconsistency leads to many challenges, not the least of which is teaching your child how to manipulate people and decrease the possibility of producing responsible, confident adults. And sometimes sisters say to me, but sister, I live in an extended family and my in-laws just spoil the children and they don't agree, or my husband doesn't agree. So it's really important that you try your absolute best to get people on the same page. And if there are disagreements with you and other adult sisters, work it out without your child suffering the consequences of adults letting them down. Because then imagine the child knows who they can manipulate when, or who they can get away with. It shouldn't be like that. They should be, they should have the same expectations with all of the adults in their life, whether it's you, their dad, their relative, your relatives, whoever is in their circle. Okay, your kids must take responsibility for their choices, but you must also. Okay, if you are inconsistent in following the guidelines that you put in place, you are sending a message that this is the issue and it's not important. This issue is not important. And that you can't be trusted to follow through with your own responsibilities. And then what happens? The result is mixed messages. A child might take advantage of this by slacking off at their end of the deal, okay? And then what happens? You are inadvertently teaching a child that you're not trustworthy, because they know Imagine you're inconsistent and you say, oh, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. But the child knows, really, my mom isn't going to bother doing that at all. And that's not anything to be worried about. Well, then the child won't bother doing it. On top of that, they'll be getting mixed messages and they'll not do it. And then you're teaching your child that you're not trustworthy yourself because you're not even going to implement what you said you are. And remember, from a really young age, children are really good and really thrive and are really responsive to routines and to expectations. So the best or ideal type of parent that you can be is a authoritative parent, where you've got boundaries for your child, but you're also warm and loving and responsive towards that child. So it's no point in not doing what you said you were going to do, because then you're not practicing an ideal type of parenting. And children are clever and they'll pick up on that. You must be willing to let them fail, okay? What do I mean by fail? I don't mean, sisters, tell your children to cross the road if they're only very young and they can't, and then that's an accident waiting to happen. I don't mean something like that. I mean within reason, okay? So, for example, I mean things like if they haven't done their laundry and they need those clothes for tomorrow, or they haven't washed their PE kit, they haven't done their homework. It requires that your self-esteem can withstand any judgment from teachers, family, friends, and others. And you understand that you have a limited amount of control over another human, even your child. You also must be willing to tolerate the conflict it may cause in your home and family. They will then begin to realize it's their responsibility to do what is required, and you will not protect them from the consequences of their actions and choices. So, sometimes if you just take an example, say the child needs the PE kit from tomorrow. They didn't wash it. It was their responsibility, especially if they're a teenager. Now, they haven't got it with them. Okay, they call you from school, or the school calls, and they say, well, they haven't got their PE kit. You need to decide then, are you going to rescue them? Are you going to get their PE kit, sisters, and drive 20 minutes to school to give it to them? What is that child learning then? They'll do the same next time. They'll know that, oh, the mum's done it once, she'll do it again. It's not a big deal if I leave it at home. But on the other side, flip side, what's going to happen if you say, no, actually, I'm sorry, you'll have to deal with it yourself? Well, they'll learn a few things for starters, right? They'll have to learn with whatever the teachers are going to say to them at school. They'll have to know for next time, and they'll think differently. But if you're going to rescue them and do it for them, well, that, they're not going to learn any of those things. So that's just one example. Failing is most helpful when we learn something from it, okay? We all must learn to live with our decisions and our actions or inactions. So if and when they are willing, ask them to tell you what they learned from the experience. Avoid asking them this when the tension is high at the teaching moment. So if something happened and if your child made a mistake, especially if they're old enough that they can verbalize or talk about it, you can do that at a different time. So in my parenting course, I encourage parents to do it like a completely different time, when you're both calmed down, not when you're both angry and upset. They're upset and you're upset. But afterwards, ask them what they learned from the experience. Don't go in all screaming and shouting that I told you so and this is what happened, because they'll just listen from one ear, it'll go out the other ear, and they won't care. They'll, you're humiliating them and shouting at them. But if you actually sit down and ask them, well, what did you learn? It's very, very different scenario. If a teenager came home, something's happened, and you immediately start shouting at them and they're shouting at you, you're both using the wrong part, reptilian part of the brain. Neither of you are thinking logically. You say things to upset each other, finished. You feel upset because you've just had a boiling temperature. You need to go and calm down. They're upset and nobody learned anything. Instead, let it go for a few minutes or even till the end of the day. And whenever is right for you, you can sit down and discuss it with them. Why? Because you can ask them, what did they learn from the experience? Okay. And if they're open to discussion, talk about how to handle it differently in the future. At some point, they will finally realize that when they make that choice, they are also choosing the consequences that go with it. Learn to let go and always love them while sticking to your standards, even when you're disappointed and they're miserable. Also, you can catch them being good. And this is a phrase that you hear often, parenting people will tell you, when your kids do things that you want them to do and you want to see more of, be happy and thank them and tell them you appreciate what they've done and use words to describe what you like. Okay, be careful that you don't inadvertently lower the expectations. For example, if you ask your child to do a chore, like say wash the dishes before they went to bed, and say that they did wash the dishes, don't go overboard with the praise of doing what is expected, right? Because that was expected of them. So don't go over the top praising them and rewarding them for that, but acknowledge it. Okay, acknowledge it and say, Jazakallah khair, you did the dishes today, and that's fine, because first of all, you're not ignoring them, you're acknowledging it, but secondly, you're not going overboard because it was expected that they were supposed to do that. Set up opportunities for a child to succeed. So allow children to make choices from an early age within reason. For example, you need to put on a coat before leaving the school. Do you want to wear the red one or the green one? So if they're really young children and they think they don't need a coat, I don't know why, for some bizarre reason, children sometimes don't seem to feel the cold even when it's raining or snowing outside, and they say, I don't want my coat, I don't need my coat, I'm not cold, right? So create an opportunity for them where they have to need the coat. So just ask them, which coat are you wearing? You wearing this one or are you wearing that one? So this doesn't give them the option of getting out without a coat, but actually it's a safe and good way to teach them decision making. So set up things they can easily do so they can gain confidence when they succeed. As they get older, the choices become riskier, but that is part of the developmental cycle. Those who begin making decisions at an early age will develop more confidence. Therefore, they're more likely to take calculated risks. Giving them more choices within reason builds more confidence. If they mess up, and they will, it'll give them a lesser opportunity to prove they can handle something smaller. But as they do, they gain confidence and they gain your trust, right? So once they start getting a little bit more confident, they can do a little bit more, and they can start getting your trust as well. Okay. Separate the behavior from the child. This is really, really, really important, sisters. I can't stress how important this is. Always be really clear. If your child did something bad, in simple terms, tell them you didn't like the action. Say, I don't like what you did. I don't like what you said. I don't like what happened there, but I love you. Okay. So don't call your child names. Don't call them an idiot. Don't say to them, you're stupid. No, you can say the action was really silly, and what they said was really inappropriate, and what they did you didn't like, but you still need to let them know that you love them as their parent, which you do. This is so important for especially for the younger ones, or even for teenagers, that you communicate this to them, that it's not them that you've got issue with, it's the actions or their behavior or what they've said. Okay, so that's a really important point. Okay. How well are you doing so far, sisters? So on a scale from 1 to 10, answer these 7 questions. You don't need to answer them to me. You can type them in the chat if you want, or you can scribble them down, or just think about them and be honest. Because if you're not doing as well as you would like to be doing, then inshallah, we can help you and we can support you to do that. So have a think about these next slides that are coming up. How well do you provide opportunities for your children to learn by allowing them to make decisions on their own? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 10. If you've got a pen and paper in front of you, write it down. If you haven't, just think of a number. 1 being like you don't at all, and 10 being you always do. How well do you uphold your responsibilities by being clear about expectations and consequences, following through, and working together with other adults that are in the child's life? Again, sisters, rate yourselves from 1 to 10. I can see some of the sisters are writing in the chat. That's good. And we're not judging you, sisters. I don't expect you all to be a 10, and I don't want you to feel awful. It's just so you can know. If you know, you can learn and you improve. If you don't, then you can't. How well do you talk about mistakes and failures to help them learn? Okay, in positive parenting, we always say mistakes are an opportunity to learn. They're not just something that you tell the child off for. And how, if your children make mistakes and failures, do you talk about it? How well do you tell them that you appreciate their efforts when they do their best? Okay, if they do something that you want them to do, how often do you tell them? And statistically, sisters, a lot of the time, say in any sort of given day, for a majority of the time, the children will do things that are acceptable or okay. But as mums, we just ignore them because there's nothing to talk about. But the second they'll do something you don't want them to, you'll spot that and you'll talk about it. And you might even exaggerate it till that becomes a massive part of your day, ignoring that they might have done 3 or 4 other things during the day that were quite good, but you didn't even mention them. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you separate the deed from the child? How well do you say it's the action or the speech that's the problem, not you? How well do you reinforce good behavior and choices? Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10. How well do you allow them to experience negative consequences for choices and behavior, even when it's really difficult? So if they're going to make a bad decision, do you let them? Do you let them experience it a little bit? Or do you just rescue them? Okay. So how are you feeling now? I hope that so far you found this informative, and I hope that you had some moments just then for self-reflection as well, inshallah. Okay. So now, sisters, there's different paths you can take. If you enjoyed this workshop, inshallah, and I hope you found it beneficial, then definitely take the teachings and implement them on your lives with your children. Some of you know that who have watched my other webinar on developing a deeper, stronger relationship with your children, that I also offer parenting courses. So the next one I'm going to be starting on Saturday, inshallah. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit. It's a 6-week course. It's live. The Quran Quest admin will drop the link into the chat, inshallah, for you so that you can have a little look at it. I'm just going to explain everything about it, and then you can ask any questions either about the course or about what we've talked about today. So it's a 6-week live parenting class, which happens every Saturday for 2 hours in the afternoon at 12:30. You get a parenting workbook to support you throughout it. So it's not just a course where I'm talking, sisters. It's very experiential. So you'll get into little online groups and do the activities so you can actually feel how the children might feel as well. You'll get the positive discipline tool cards because it's all about Islamic positive parenting the Islamic way. So we've incorporated everything from an Islamic element, alhamdulillah. You'll get all the recordings for any classes that you miss. You get live group coaching sessions, and you get a free Iman in Children mini course that I've put together as well. And you will get a support group where you can support each other, and some A4 dua posters. So even though it is at a high value, I do work professionally as a speech and language therapist, sisters, but I only do that an absolute minimum because I've actually dedicated a lot of time to do dawah and to try and help Muslim moms and Muslim children for the benefit of the ummah, inshallah. So if you are interested in joining me, sisters, do click on the link that admin has dropped into the chat box and do join the course, inshallah. So it's only at this discounted price for now. And we are only taking in a very small group of sisters because we like to work with you one-to-one across the 6 weeks to sort of support you with your individual problems. And remember what I said about accountability, sisters. One of the reasons we do this is so that you've got accountability to implement these small changes in your life on a weekly basis. And then the following week, we'll ask you, did you manage to implement it? Did it work for you? Did it not work for you? How can we support you? Whereas if you just go off and do it on your own, a lot of the time we've got so much information out there that we become busy and tired and lazy, and then we don't implement it. So think about what it's worth for your children and your relationship with them, and whether you want to create that amazing Islamic family environment in your houses, inshallah. So if anybody's got any questions, sisters, do drop them in the chat box. I'm going to get my chat box up now, inshallah, to have a quick look. Jazakallahu khairan. I'm just going to have a look at all the chat. Yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed it, sisters. So if you drop your emails in the chat box, we can email you the handouts to go with this so that you can have a little think about what we've said afterwards, and you can, read it. Yeah, Jazakallah khairan, Sister Naheed, very benefit, especially us. Yeah, definitely, Sister Naheed. Yeah, and remember, everything you're doing for your children, sisters, those children are going to grow up and turn into adults, and they'll practice with their children. So imagine how many generations you have an impact on when you practice your own parenting methods. And think about how your parents practiced parenting on with you. This is what I teach my students. Sometimes you don't realize, but that has an impact on how you're a parent, because you be carrying around baggage from your childhood. You know, your parents did what they did with you, and sometimes it might have been great, and sometimes the methods might not have been so great. But that does impact you as well. Yeah, so Jazakallah to people who are dropping their emails. Drop your emails in the chat, sisters, because if you've got your emails, we can send you the handouts, which have just got the sort of pointers, the exercise that we did together, so you can have a little think about that and hopefully make changes for the better for yourselves and for your children. Jazakallah khair, Sister Sabine. Does anybody have any questions, sisters? Yep, jazakallah to everybody who's dropping their emails. So I hope you found this really beneficial. From what I've already, yeah, Sister Sabine, it's the same one. So one of my students is in the chat. Sister Sabine, do you want to drop a comment on how you found the course? You can even open your mic and tell us if you want. But yeah, Sister Sabine was one of my past students on the parenting course.
Assalamu alaikum, sisters. Yeah, alhamdulillah, as usual, I always find these courses and talk very beneficial because alhamdulillah, I learned something new, and I try to kind of make notes of everything that's being taught in the courses and try to implement it, because I keep going backward and forward and try to kind of refresh my knowledge, you know, after every kind of week or every month, just to see that that I'm still implementing those things that have been taught to me, and I just always find them very useful and beneficial, and I have realized that it has strengthened my relationship with the children, and alhamdulillah, I can say you know, like since I've attended these courses, I have developed a very strong relationship with my girls, which was a nightmare before.
Yeah, yeah.
So alhamdulillah, I would definitely recommend, because we did a lot of actually role play, you know, putting ourselves in the shoes of our kids, like how, if we are, you know, in place of our children, how would we feel if parents shout or scream or say kind of, you know, something, you know, so it was quite useful to learn in that way and try to kind of avoid those things that could upset our children. And of course, so it was quite useful. Of course, like again today, I learned quite a few, you know, positive things that inshallah I will definitely implement. But yeah, I would definitely say that inshallah just sign up for the course, because I have, alhamdulillah, I have noticed improvement and kind of, you know, developing a strong relationship with my girls. So yeah.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Sabine. So I didn't even know Sister Sabine was coming on today, sisters, and you know, she didn't know she was coming on, but you heard it from her. She's done the course, and what a profound impact it's had on her and her relationship with her two girls. Yes, Sister Nahid's asked, what do you think the impact of cultural effects of parenting, over rescuing, therefore overprotection? I agree with what Sister MA has said. You know, you do often rescue your children and you think you're protecting them, but then when they grow up, Nahid, these are the children who don't have that ability to make, like we said, they don't have the skills to do critical thinking or making any decisions on their own. So actually, even though they might have on the surface had what looks like a successful childhood, but as adults, they can't make basic decisions. And I see these adults all the time. They really struggle, or they need somebody else to step in and help them. And you think it was such a basic decision, but they don't know how to calculate risks and whether they should go for something or not go for something. So yeah. Sister, do you do? Yes. So the sisters who asked me if I do group sessions, I do. Yes, I can do them in a masjid. So yes, you can speak to the masjid management. If any sisters would like the sessions to take place for a particular group, do get in touch with me, sister. I'll be happy to speak to you about that. Just drop me an email, sister, on the email address that you signed up to this this course for. So if there's no more, Sister Tamim's dropped a really nice message as well. She's also one of my students who did the parenting course. found it beneficial and still implementing everything she learned. So she's got, mashallah, 4 children, ranging from a young boy to an older boy, and a daughter as well, alhamdulillah. So it's applicable no matter what age your children are, up to the age of teenagers, I would say, sisters. But you've got to do, sisters, this is our ummah, okay? And you've got a responsibility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has entrusted this responsibility on you with your children. So don't just, take it easy. You have to do things in order to make sure you're being the best parent that you can be. And this is why we've put this together, to really support you to do that, inshallah. You've got to be willing to take action, inshallah. Okay, if there's no more questions, inshallah, we will stop there because we're coming up to the hour. So jazakumullahu khairan for everybody who attended, and I have enjoyed being with you. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.